Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm Mary Fran Johnson, CEO of Mary Fran Johnson Media and the former editor-in-chief of CIO Magazine and Events. Since November 2017, this video show and audio podcast has been produced by the editors of CIO.com and the digital media division of Foundry, which is an IDG company. Our sponsor for this episode today is Ohio-based Hyland Software, which provides industry-leading enterprise content management and process management software. Hyland's content solutions empower its customers to deliver exceptional experiences by connecting their systems and managing high volumes of diverse content that accelerates and automates processes and workflows. Visit the Hyland.com website to learn more. And now onward to today's guest, which I'm very pleased to say is the Senior Vice President and CIO at Hyland Software, Stephen Watt. Steve is responsible for the global delivery of corporate IT services for Hyland's rapidly expanding employee base, now encompassing more than 3,500 Hylanders around the world. He joined Hyland 20 years ago as an IS infrastructure administrator, back when the company had only 185 employees and an IT team of 6 people. As the business grew rapidly and expanded globally, Steve played key roles in the deployment of new technologies that supported the company's explosive growth. He served in several key roles during his long tenure, much of that focused on infrastructure systems, process, and policy, and he was promoted into the CIO role officially in early 2021. Prior to Hyland, he worked as an IT director in the education industry and an independent IT consultant. Steve, welcome and thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you very much, Mary Fran. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, excellent. Now, it is, as we talked about earlier as we were getting ready for this show today, it's really rare. I think I called you a unicorn, and because it's rare to find a CIO who has such a long tenure with a single company. Talk about what has kept you challenged and engaged at Hyland Software all of these years.
Yeah, for me personally, it's been quite a journey. When I was working in the IT field, especially as I was finishing school, I was planning on a career in electrical engineering, and I happened to get in contact with what Hyland was, and really over this time, it's a couple of specific things. For me, I was really interested in the IT front on a company that was sort of in that mid-market that was on a growth trajectory, striving to become enterprise. And that was very attractive. And then really what's kept me here is that with our growth and everything, there's never been a slowdown in the number of challenges that we've had to solve. And I love solving interesting problems. And then the cliche answer of it is that I've truly enjoyed the people that I've worked with over this amount of time. I think we've all had those jobs where we worked with people that we did not enjoy, the people we were working with on a day-to-day basis. But Hyland, I think, has had a unique position to attract great people that I've really had an honor working with and, being a part of that journey with them. So that has been a big part of it as well, is just the pleasure I've had with my colleagues and, solving big problems together is a great way to spend your time.
Well, tell us too a little bit about Hyland's market, the people that buy the Hyland software, that has expanded over time as well. Tell us a little bit about that customer base out there that has part of that explosive growth.
Yeah, definitely. We sell into almost any vertical market that you can think of, whether it's healthcare, financial services, commercial, manufacturing. Our software is pretty ubiquitous in its application. And that's just, a lot of it is due to the configurability and the number of solutions that we can offer our customers today. That has been exciting. Our customer base has continued to grow significantly since I've been with the organization, and it's been interesting to see how that presents itself. Comes with its own unique challenges as you enter into like highly regulated markets like healthcare or financial. But again, it's fun to solve those interesting challenges. So
yeah, and around the world at this point, you've got somewhere around 15,000 customers.
That is correct. Yeah, around 15,000 customers across pretty much every vertical market you can think of.
Okay. Now let's talk about the size and scope of your technology team. Those 6 people that you started out with back 20 years ago is now about the size that the entire company was when you joined. It's upwards of 170 folks in IT now.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. So that's been kind of a surreal experience of itself in that growth of seeing that when you're running a department that's the same size as the entire organization was, kind of puts in perspective, what the stakes are and the fact that, you shoulder a lot of responsibility to help the organization continue to move in the right direction.
Yeah. How have you structured that technology team to deliver the most value to the rest of the business? And I take it that's changed a great deal over the 20 years. So what is your the most recent snapshot of what your org structure looks like for the technology group?
Yeah, the way that we're structured now is it's definitely not a unique perspective on what we do, but we try to organize in sort of a service delivery methodology, really around that classic plan, build, run type of framework. And really, the key to why we do that is that we're always looking for driving efficiency in our operational side of our business. And all of the sort of keeping the lights on activities, we want to make sure that we're doing that in the most efficient way possible so that we free up, our budget dollars otherwise to make sure that we can continue to invest in innovation, in the future of what we need to do as an IT organization. That really gives us a good delineation of how, all of our work comes in and gives us the flexibility that we need to, kind of strategically assign where we are investing those dollars, investing those teams, and trying to move our solutions forward.
Okay. Now, when we talked earlier, you mentioned that there's another part of the organization, the Chief Technology Officer part, which is more directly linked to the customers. Tell us about that. How does that division work? And is this CTO someone that you work with on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, we work very closely with our technology org. So all of our customer-facing infrastructure operations and delivery happens underneath that umbrella. So my organization, provides a supportive function for the business operations that they rely on, but we like to keep that part of our business separate so that they are 100% focused on that customer experience and the customer journey through our cloud solutions. And so it's a great organization. They do a great job in supporting our customers, and we try to do everything we need to as well to make sure that they can do the jobs they need to do.
Yep. Okay, great. Now, you'd also mentioned when we talked earlier that you've spent a lot of time on several major key systems over the last year or two. Tell us, kind of give us a snapshot of what's going on deep in your operations. What sort of accomplishments has your tech team been delivering in the last year or two?
Absolutely. Well, we had just gone live last year in 2023. We had gone through a pretty large 2-year lead to cash transformational initiative. Okay. And really the key with that project was to overhaul a majority of our systems that go, from the entire gambit of contracting all the way through revenue recognition, billing, really to ensure that as we continue to evolve and build a new generation of products for Hyland, that our systems are ready to go to support that and to support our growth as a company. Over time, we all know that you amass a lot of technical debt around systems that have been around a long time. And we felt it was time to do a pretty major revamp. And it was a tremendous amount of work across the entirety of the organization. And it begins a lot of change, and there's a lot to work with. After that go live, we've had a lot of work to do to make sure we've got all the sort of second phase features and work out any bugs, everything that needs to happen in those platforms. But it's been a tremendous accomplishment over that time for my team and the other parts of the organization that worked on that project.
Well, it's interesting because even companies, whether you're in the tech industry or in one of the other many industries that Hyland serves, technical debt is something that starts amassing within a few years of the creation of a company. So, what is that journey going to look like going forward for you? You're at 20. Let me see. The Highland's been around since the early 90s, since 91. So, is there an end goal where you think you ever get to a point where you can say, okay, all of our tech debt is cleaned up now? Or is that
Um,
just is that just a
yeah, my
fantasy?
answer to that would actually be no. I don't think you're ever done. I mean, I think it's part of the
Okay.
reason that switching to a more agile product-based methodology in the delivery of our systems, which we had done, probably going on 8 years ago now or more,
Okay.
is that we really like to look at what we deliver as a product like you would anything else. And the idea is that you should always be improving, you should always be addressing those things. And
Mhm.
it's not about sort of being done, it's about how do you continuously deliver value. And that's what we strive to do.
Okay, okay. Talk about some of the common problems that, and this may be something you discussed with your other with CIO peers, things that they're tackling across those various customer segments that you all solve, especially in the enterprise content management space. What are the common problems that everybody is wrestling with these days?
I think it's a lot of the same thing. I mean, I think the forefront, and we talked before, it wouldn't be that long till we got to this answer, is that
Yep.
AI is the front, on the front of everyone's mind.
Yeah.
For the content management space in itself, I think what we spend a lot of time thinking about is where do you have those silos of information, those silos of data,
Yeah.
and how do you unlock it? I think a big part of what our go forward product strategy is going to be about is how to bring that content that you have locked up potentially in repositories that aren't our repositories, but even other repositories, and create a fundamental AI platform that allows you to build workflows and AI generated content using any of it
Yeah.
sort of ubiquitously, which is it's kind of an exciting place to be. I'm excited to be part of a company that's trying to build that.
Yeah.
Internally, we're in the place where a lot of people are of looking to the future of trying to figure out where are all the places that we think we can build effective AI use cases that are going to help us, with our own strategic initiatives, and
Hmm.
strategic things that we are trying to improve, whether that's customer experience, external or employee experience for our own internal folks.
Hmm.
And again, where do those investments need to happen? Because there's no shortage of companies, obviously, that are building and selling and marketing AI solutions. So you have to be a little bit prescriptive in your application.
Yeah. Well, I find it really interesting, especially talking to CIOs who are inside various tech industry companies, because you don't just have your business folks asking you about, well, what are we doing with AI? You've got all your customers expecting AI to be built into more products and so forth. Is an
Yep.
AI platform any different from an enterprise data platform? Are we talking about an entirely new thing, or is an AI platform essentially an evolution of whatever data platform you're using?
I would say what we're trying to build is something brand new. I think with what we plan to deliver to our customers is going to unlock an access to data that, to my knowledge, I don't think it exists anywhere else in the market. And I think that's why it's so important to us on why we see this as a transformational stage of where content comes into play and
Hmm.
gives you, the ability to use that content from any repository, not just what you're doing inside of our own, content services, systems and storage today. Right now, like where the market is every player kind of is niched into their own solution, right? Their little add-ons, their little pieces.
Yeah.
And this was something that I was even asking analysts, when this kind of started 2 years ago, is that are there any players out there that are not trying to be tied to a specific solution, but be more uniform, where you would have a more generalized AI platform that you could tie together, and it wasn't really something that was happening. So when that started to synthesize within our own organization, and I started to hear about it, and when our CEO was on stage at our own user conference, kind of
Hmm.
announcing this and what we were doing, that's why I definitely think it's a very exciting time for to be at Highland. For me, I'm excited because it's something that I think is going to have an impact for our customers, have an impact for us internally. I'm just as excited to be a user of it as, to see us sell it to customers.
Ah, that's interesting. Well, but you also made the point when we talked earlier that CIOs as a group are further along what I think Gartner calls the hype curve, and might be heading into the trough of despair.
The trough of
Because
despair. Yes,
it's,
I do think that is true. I
yeah,
think there's a lot of, people that have tried a lot of things and in some cases haven't unlocked the value that they think has been there. I've heard of great use cases that have unlocked tremendous amounts of value. And I think now everyone's trying to just figure out, what it is. And there's a lot to balance, right? There's a lot to balance in your budget or your investments as we go into 2025 and beyond.
yeah,
That if you're going to be spending new dollars on these AI initiatives, where are you backing out of, and how do you do that? So I think one of my favorite expressions I had heard from a peer recently was that you want to make sure with AI that you're not going so fast that you get a speeding ticket, but you can't go so slow that you get a parking ticket. So I think we're all trying to find where's that sweet spot in how we evaluate these solutions, how we evaluate the value to the organization, where those investments should be. It's just a lot of work to kind of narrow that down.
yeah. Well, and you had mentioned to me as well that you think AI is driving a lot of the decision making that companies are having to do about the right level of investments. How are you approaching that at Highland? Is this something, does this get involved all the way up to your new CEO, or is this just something you and the CTO work out together? How do you decide on the investment levels?
No, it's definitely something that's being talked at all levels on the executive side. For our internal use, we have a lot of work that we do around, like a lot of companies, we've formed an AI council that we review business case from around the organization that come to us with ideas of how they might either want to invest or there's an add-on. So we look at AI in that council from a lot of different ways. We look at what's our return on investment going to be if it's something that's new that we have to purchase? How are we going to make sure that this keeps our data or our customers' data secure? What are the trickle down effects from any kind of training of AI models or what they do around it? We decide whether we need to do full POCs, to make sure that we gather KPIs back on how that solution is being used. Even if it's something we're not paying for, we want to know, we're still investing time and we're investing effort into building a solution that might be on it. How are we going to come back and show that group that here's what it really changed for us so that we can make an informed decision going forward? Because I do think there's going to be AI use cases and solutions where we see tremendous value. And then I think there's going to be some where we end up pruning the tree, if you will, that maybe just die on the vine and don't really provide as much benefit as we thought it was going to. And we have to make sure that we kind of cut our losses where we need to and then reinvest our time and energy and other things. And we try to do that, through that group to make sure that we have a good process to continuously evaluate where we are.
And when you say through that group, that you're referring to your AI council.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Tell us more about that. How did that get formed? Who runs it? Who's involved in it? Is that something that a lot of companies, I've experienced a number of CIOs talking about having an AI special projects or an AI innovation council. So it's getting to be kind of almost de rigueur out there in the industry to have an AI council. So tell us about yours.
Yeah, no, it's the way it kind of came to formation at Highland is that we knew that there was a lot of requests already coming, and there was a lot of interest in these technologies. We knew there was a lot of interest in how we build them into our products. Our chief legal officer is actually who was kind of the driving force around it. Originally a lot of thoughts around risk and cybersecurity is still a big part of what we review, but then we quickly knew that this was going to be a bigger activity than just a risk assessment, that we needed to be looking at things more holistically. And over time, as we've met, we've added in additional components. Initially, we didn't spend too much time talking about the cost of the tool with that, with the council. It was more about just, are we comfortable with the use case and how we're going to evaluate it? But then we started thinking about, well, no, like the ROI becomes just as important as we knew that this volume was going to increase, that we wanted to get into the numbers a little bit more. So it provides a great venue to have a healthy dialogue, both with the executive team that participates and with the people that come from our business with these use cases. They've got a very clear, direct line of communication with the leadership on kind of proving out their idea and having that discussion openly so that we can move as quickly as possible, which was part of it too. We didn't want each of these decisions kind of being made individually in a vacuum. We wanted to be able to have a more holistic view of what was happening around our use of AI company wide.
Yeah. Well, and you probably have a lot of AI along with machine learning and robotic process automation, all that stuff. It all seems to have evolved together, although AI has pulled out far ahead of RPA and machine learning, machine language, in terms of recognition by the business community. Do you already have a number of, I mean, are there things in Hyland's products that you could point to and say, oh, well, that's an AI process right there? In other words, it's been there for a number of years.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of things that you could say with Hyland that we've been in sort of the AI space for more than a decade. We sell an RPA product. We use that internally as well. We have some of our capture tools are very, ML focused. One of our main products, Brainware, is all about, intelligent processing of forms. Our Hyland IDP software is similarly, all about adding intelligence to your form capture and processing. So we've been doing a lot in that space for a long time. I think now, like where the big shift is obviously on that generative AI side. And the explosion that was OpenAI, and now you've got so many other companies that have kind of brought to market and finding new and inventive use cases for that, which is a bit of a paradigm shift because it doesn't require as sort of once you've got your models trained, it doesn't require as much manual intervention of continuous training and help. Right. Along those stacks. So I think it is a very exciting technology and a big reason why Hyland is investing so heavily in it.
Okay. Does that also, let's pivot over and talk about the talent side of this equation. Just in a couple aspects, and since we're on our AI train right now, how do you make sure you have the talent on board that you need for the AI development? Do you work with outside consulting groups, or are these talents that you are encouraging and developing internally?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, within my own work, my focus has been on elevating sort of the base level knowledge across all of my team members because, our internal folks, they've got a significant amount of domain expertise that it's not about, replacing somebody that just knows about AI, especially when you're talking about internal IT delivery. It's a lot more about that AI is being threaded into every solution that those engineers and administrators are responsible for. And they need to have fundamental understandings around how that works before they even get into the product specifics. So we have focused a lot in the last 18 months on, training initiatives, incentivizing additional training, spending time getting certifications to sort of raise the floor, if you will, across all of the IT organization. Within our products, obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of learning, and we've also had strategic hires across our product organization as well. Fundamentally, for some of those folks that have been on the bleeding edge of designing and implementing generative AI based solutions, things like that as well. So it's been a little bit of both, and it's been exciting to see.
Yeah, I would imagine. And do you find that the talent that you're working with at some point, do they just say, well, we've been doing this stuff for a while, where are we headed with it? Do you have ways that when you talk about this with your own staff, are you mapping out, career enhancing positions that they might head into as the AI interest expands?
I don't know that we're necessarily like defining AI around our job, but we are trying to highlight the importance that for a majority of roles, AI is going to be another bullet point that there's an expectation for. So really what I've spent my time championing with my teams are that this isn't something you can just idly watch go by as a passive, viewer. That if you've got plenty of time, unless you're ready to retire soon, like if you have plenty of time left in your career, that you kind of need to jump in with both feet and be ready to embrace this technology. I don't think it's a fad. I mean, yes, there's hype, it's going to solve everything, and we all get on that bandwagon at times. But I do think this is going to be ubiquitous over, the next several decades. It's not going to be something that is just here and gone. I don't think we're going to be talking about it the same way.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to look as we often talk about waves of technology change, like the mainframes to mini computers, minis to PCs, and then for a while the cloud providers, everybody was talking about how cloud was the next really big wave, and it really does seem like the focus on data and AI is truly that wave.
And it doesn't go away.
That's
the thing. It's
shore.
Like someone
Yeah.
that needed to learn cloud. Well, guess what? Cloud's still here, and that needs to be part of your repertoire.
Sure.
Gen AI needs to be part of someone's repertoire if they want to
Yeah.
continue to be competitive in their technical field. It's just something
Right.
that's going to become table stakes.
Okay. Now, still on the topic of your staff and the talent, a lot of companies, I think Amazon's made a lot of noise about this, are starting to say everybody needs to come into the office. But when we talked earlier, you said you have a very fully hybrid model of working since the pandemic. Is that, tell us about that. How is that? Is that anything that you're considering making changes in, or is a hybrid model for in the office and out of the office working best for you?
Yeah, for my part of the organization, the hybrid model is definitely working. It has allowed us to attract and retain talent, in a much larger space than we potentially wouldn't have in the past. I mean, we had remote employees well before the pandemic. It wasn't about that, but that definitely was not the norm. And so the big 180-degree shift has been where a majority of my staff is hybrid. And at this point, we have no plans to kind of change that for how we're working within our group. And we've found ways to be effective, to be honest. And for a lot of our employees, it is a key differentiator still that we're a company that's remaining hybrid. Not that we don't have events in the office or bringing people in the office and look to get them here. And that's something we're continuing to try to find unique and innovative ways. I think our HR group has been doing a great job trying to encourage, the right level of engagement when the opportunity is there to get folks in person. And I think people do get value out of that, but they want to see, to their point, they want to see value of doing it, right? Like it's not just mandate a day to have a day. It's, well, what are you going to be doing? If you're going to schedule a meeting, how do you do other events around it? Or how do you do some, whether it's team building, learning and development, maybe you have some sort of like a guest speaker or something like that. Like anything that could kind of like bring people together is something that we're looking for. To steal someone else's quote, I think it was the CEO of Cisco recently that said about their spaces that you want it to be
A magnet, not a mandate.
yeah, magnet, not a mandate. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, magnet, not a mandate, which I think is a great way to sum it up, right? Like you want
Isn't it?
you
Yeah.
want to create an environment that entices people to want to come in for those interactions, and you make it purposeful, not something that you're just dictating that they have to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, and you've seen an interesting cultural difference too, in the fact that the part of your staff that's over in Calcutta is, I think you said, 100% in the office as opposed to at home. How does that work differently for you as the CIO?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we have to plan around a little bit more prescriptively. I mean, we have some amount of employees in our Kolkata office that are working remotely, but the majority are close and in office all the time. And so there, it's a lot more normal culturally, and there's been some sort of government interventions that have kind of pushed that into that market. And I'd say they've gotten kind of comfortable with that as well. Now, at the same time, Highland's take on it is we definitely still try to provide as much flexibility, even for our international employees in our Calcutta office,
Yeah.
for them to not feel like it's something that's only being forced upon them and nobody else. So I think flexibility has always been a key part of how we run our operations and how we work with our employees. And I don't think that is something that Highland has intentions to change. So
Okay. Okay. Back for just a second to AI. You had mentioned use cases a couple of times. Is there any one I have noticed with CIOs that often the first place where AI is escaping out of IT and has more to do with their customer base usually has something to do with like helping with improving customer search capabilities or self-service capabilities, that sort of thing. Are there any of the use cases that you have been experimenting with or rolling out? Are they worth talking about in
yeah,
terms of what you've seen on the good and the bad there?
definitely, yeah. This has been a big focus of ours over the last several months. So internally, through kind of a citizen developer program that we try to always encourage as well. We're a software company. You're going to have a lot of people with a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
We had started working on an internal tool that was for accelerating our support reps. So the idea was that how do we get our support reps to be able to get them to the right information to help a customer during an issue as quickly as possible. And that's been pretty successful with where we've gone with that so far as an internal tool. Really, what we see as the next phases is that we want to get this same tool into the hands of our partners and then ultimately into the hands of our customers through our customer portals.
Yeah.
That type of thing will allow us to empower customers because at the end of the day, I think nobody really likes having to contact support or be on a support ticket working through an issue. What you're trying to get to is a resolution, and we do see opportunities to look at how we use these tools and what we've initially deployed internally, put them in the hands of our customers so that now they can get to the answer even themselves more quickly with potentially never having to kind of engage with support directly if
Yeah.
they have these tools. So
Yeah.
we're excited about it. I think it's something that we'll see coming in 2025. Hopefully not too late as we kind of ramp up what we're doing. A lot of internal testing going on now, and we have a few partners that have started to use the tool as well. And so far things have been looking good. I think there's a lot of ways that we can help support customers with some of these tooling, and it's something that we're going to continue to focus on.
Yeah. Now, have you always had citizen developers inside of Highland? And I can say
No.
always because you have been there for 20 years. So if they were around, you would have noticed them.
Yeah,
So,
no, I would say, in the beginnings of when I was here, we had, like a lot of IT organizations at that time, we
uh,
took a much more sort of constrictive approach to how we
they,
manage technology.
they were
Uh,
shadow IT, right? They
yeah,
were
a lot of
rogue
shadow
IT.
IT would come, but we were still a software development company, so we had plenty of apps that developers would kind of do on their own time, and we would find out about it later. Where we've gone since then is that we have tried to partner with different groups to encourage that if they have people that are interested in one of our platforms, either working within our communities of practice or getting them in touch with the teams that sort of manage those systems, and then work with them to promote that more. It really technology became so you know open as the shift to the cloud and SaaS apps and everything else that
Yeah.
trying to kind of keep it all reined in was not going to work for Highland in the long term. So what we try to do is encourage that we get people connected with the right tools. They develop things or work on things in the right way, and then if and when it's appropriate, if somebody works on something and it's time for it to go enterprise wide, we try to have the right handoff for how that happens. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think you mentioned that one of these citizen developers came up with an AI model used to search your knowledge base.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
we've now brand Highland Assist started with a really great individual within our services organization who had been
Okay.
kind of dabbling with what he could do with some of the OpenAI services that we
Yeah.
exposed through our Microsoft Azure platform,
Hmm.
and built kind of mocked up an initial capabilities that we could look at, and from there we were able to accelerate, do some more with it, tie it to some more developers, and build it out more fully. And it was a great example of, wasn't something that we had sort of had the time or focus on yet.
Yeah.
But when we were able to see kind of what he had done so far, it made sense that, hey, this is going to be pretty impactful. Let's build on this, which is a
That's
great,
great.
in my opinion, is a great success.
Yeah. Well, I hope somebody came up with an Employee of the Month award or something for that citizen developer, right? Um, let's pivot over to the kind of your top level strategic technology and business priorities as you go into 2025. Of course, we've talked a lot about AI. As you know, I joke that it's practically a federal law now that we spend a lot of time discussing AI. I've had so many CIOs who say, okay, we'll talk about AI, but it's just math. And I figure they're saying that to just scare me off, so I won't ask too many questions about it. But let's talk about the things that are kind of your very top priorities. We mentioned the technical debt, which of course is kind of an ongoing, but what are you looking forward to in 25 that's going to be really exciting for your staff to get involved in?
Yeah, I don't know the level of excitement, but like I said, we had gone through a pretty large lead to cash transformational process that,
Yep.
part of that involved a large expansion and the number of solutions and systems that were involved in our day-to-day operations.
Hmm.
Like a lot of transformations, we probably overshot where we needed to be. So next year, I think we're going to be spending a lot of time doing some, now some additional rationalization as we've been, past
Hmm.
go live, over a year now. And really looking at, like, did we make any investments that we need to reevaluate? Do we need to do any consolidation maybe where we, over solutioned in any areas? Because I can't really stress enough the scope and how big some of these transformative projects become. That
Yes.
it's easy, and you want to think like, oh, like, you don't want to mention that, but it happens that you might over engineer, overcompensate, overbuy, over solution something, and I feel like we're coming into this point where we're going to be reevaluating some of that and making sure that if there's some places where we want to pull back a little bit, refactor, just get things honed in and sort of as perfectly running as we can. That's going to
Hmm.
be a big focus for us next year for sure.
Okay.
I'm excited about it because it's just a continued culmination of us getting to where we need to be. What our systems were in place for over 10 years. I want to get them to the place where they're ready to go for the next 10 years.
Right. Right.
At the core.
Well, that is kind of exciting too, isn't it? Because the company has never slowed down since you got there. We mentioned the explosive growth. So it's probably pretty smart to brace yourself for what the next 10 could bring, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a difference. Obviously, it's a big difference running. What we need to deliver from a capability standpoint, from where we were when we were $100 million company to
Hmm.
where we are as a over $1 billion revenue company. It's
Right.
not the same, and we want to be braced for when we become a multi-billion-dollar company. So
Yes. I guess the next big number after the 1 billion mark is to get to the 10 billion mark. And
yeah.
then they get exponentially bigger, 50 billion, 100
I
billion, a
like the
billion.
idea of going up an order of magnitude. I think our CEO would too. So I think
Yes,
that's good.
I'm sure he would. Yeah, yeah. He'll be applauding quietly when he sees this the later, I hope. Um, Also, talk about your data governance strategy. You mentioned that you are working, that is a new part of your strategic priorities going forward. And data governance, it always sounds a little bit like, oh, governance, how boring. It's a bunch of
Yeah.
regulations, but it's so essential to
Yes.
doing the job right. So talk about that and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, and I have no problem, saying here that like a lot of companies, Highland has had some starts and stops in the governance side of
Hmm.
things. I think one of the big things that we struggled with is that for a while, we kept trying to kind of put governance only under the IT umbrella. And kind of this thought that it was a problem that IT was there to fix. And in a lot of cases, governance has nothing to do with the technology, the specifics of the technology. It has a lot to do with business process and rigor around ownership of data and a lot of different things. So most recently, what I'm excited about is we've kind of shifted where that sits inside of our chief strategy office, which gives it a lot more holistic company-wide view around how we're managing and governing our data. We're taking a top-down approach, starting with the data sets that we think are most impactful to our business operations and expanding from there. So now I like it because I think the other problem with having an IT is that, obviously we have to deal with the fallout of data decisions. So you might have a tendency to kind of pick the outcome that makes the work you have to do sort of the easiest to deal with, but that might not always align with what's best for the business. Here, I love supporting it where it sits now because, I want to make sure that the way that we're dealing with data isn't just the way that makes it easiest for, my teams on how we manage or develop our systems, but make sure that it meets the criteria that the business needs fully for how they need that data to help support their operations day to day. So that's kind of exciting, and I'm excited for the work that group is doing now.
Okay. Where does and how does your cybersecurity approach and the operation of that play into all of this? Because I know you really can't talk about the data side of the coin without immediately saying something about cyber, although I understand you can't say much. But how does that how does that wedge into how you approach data governance?
Yeah, I think it's a partnership. We have a CISO that's very keen on ensuring that all parts of our operation are as secure as possible. That means looking at this from really all angles, right? It means tooling, it means systems, it means knowing where your data flows are. He also manages our compliance arm, so he's very attuned to how data flows and mapping and how we kind of control where our data is used and how it's used is a big part of us being able to accomplish our, whether we're talking compliance certification or fulfillment with customer contracts. So keeping everyone in step is the key. I mean, no one group can work kind of in a silo for that to function appropriately. And definitely cybersecurity is at the top of our mind pretty much always. That's probably been the only term that's been kind of unseated by AI, right? Like cybersecurity was the safe answer that you're always focusing on. It never goes away, but it's not as sort of fun and market friendly as talking about AI.
I know there's no Gen AI version of a cyber tool.
No.
It's just people panicking that they've gotten hacked.
Yeah. No one gets really excited about privileged access management or zero trust networking. No, they're not really.
Or out in the real world having to deal with Norton Utilities or whatever it is you're supposed to have on your PC. Yeah.
Right.
It's tough to be a cybersecurity professional, I think, these days. Yeah. Let's also talk about how you prioritize and focus the innovation work with your tech team and your business colleagues.
No, yeah, we definitely try to make sure that we're focusing on as much time as we can in the right sort of percentage of our time on innovative activities. It's been a little bit of a struggle as we came out of our especially for our sort of platform development teams as we came out of Lead to Cash because we had just a lot of work to do with after a go live. As anyone who knows, you go live and you know there are going to be bugs, so you spend a significant amount of time trying to stabilize and kind of get them all out of the system. Anything that was missed sort of prior to go live. But I've got a great individual, a senior manager on my delivery side that came to me and she advocated pretty heavily that we needed to sort of reinstitutionalize what we put in as innovation sprints, which give our engineers the flexibility to kind of either identify systems issues that are never going to be prioritized by the business because they're more back-end architectural, where a refactoring of code could mean that the next time I need to fix this, I don't have to redo this for the seventh time, or attribute for it. or give them the opportunity to look at, what are new developments within the platforms that we support that we should be looking at those capabilities, and they need some time to like either test in sandbox or see how they could build a use case that, in a lot of cases the business might not know how that function could help support them because they don't tie the technology to that aspect of it. And our engineers, while we have analysts and we have other groups that work within our business, I think the engineers have a unique perspective. So giving them that flexibility during those sprints, which we try to do at least one a quarter is our goal, really allows them to explore some of those things that maybe they're going to pan out, maybe they're not. But when they do pan out, they tend to be really impactful. And so we want to be able to support that type of innovation within our group at that level.
Yeah. Now, are there areas of when we talk about emerging technology these days, everybody almost always falls back into talking about AI or the latest with some sort of data innovation. But is there anything beyond the field of data and AI that is especially interesting to you? Like, do you watch what's going on with quantum computing, or I don't know what's going on at the space station? Things that are beyond AI. Because as a CIO and a longtime technologist, you are naturally interested in how things are developing. So, are there any that you are keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm a big tech geek, so I like to keep up to speed on sort of all of the things that are happening, in the field and what's there. I still think. Quantum computing definitely is interesting academically to me at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's outside of like cryptography and like some of the security implications, like trying to comprehend like where this is going to play into sort of day-to-day business operations on a go-forward standpoint is interesting to me. But the fact that they've started like looking at quantum computing when you're talking about like financial platforms and stock market trading and things like that is pretty interesting as well. I'm also still a little bit, bullish on seeing, are there more and unique, innovative things that are going to come out of crypto and blockchain and some of those things as well.
Yeah.
I think I would say I'm a very interested sideline participant in seeing what that is.
Okay.
We have some of our own solutions at Highland that are based on, blockchain type of technologies, which is great. But I'm interested to see, I think there are still potential use cases that haven't been tapped into. So that's one area that I'll continue to monitor as well. And just kind of see, with those, I think what's so interesting about it is that they're such a paradigm shift of like what you would think about in those sorts of tools that it's sometimes it's hard to even see what's going to be the outcome of how that might be applied. I feel like blockchain is definitely taking a little bit of a back burner with AI and everything else, but I don't think it's going anywhere, and I think there's still going to be some things that are pretty interesting. So,
well, I wonder if blockchain is going to be one of those. We used to all the time be looking for CIOs who had, this is 5-10 years ago, when I was running our CIO events, like our CIO 100 Innovation Conference, and I was always looking to get financial CIOs to get on stage and talk about what they were doing with blockchain, and nobody wanted to touch it. It was like, oh yeah, we're playing with it in the lab, and yeah, no, we're not going to talk about it publicly. But it seems like one of those very slow motion, important technologies that may take 20 years to get to that point where everybody suddenly it becomes a big deal.
Yeah, or it's going to be so behind the scenes you're not going to know until you kind of just it's explained to you that it's there.
Yeah.
Like,
well, almost the way we used to get excited about programming languages. Everybody was talking about, like the latest this or that, and then it became incorporated in what everybody was doing. And I know from a tech media standpoint, we lose interest in things once, it's the school buses that don't arrive that everybody wants to write about, that kind of thing. Tell me about, as we wrap up here, what have you learned about your own leadership style? You've gone through this, this is your IT organization. I mean, you have been there from the very early days and are now the big boss over, the 175 people. How has that changed the way you work with your staff or manage them? What have you learned during all of your wonderful time there and your long tenure, especially that you want to give as advice to other up and coming CIOs?
Yeah, this one's easy. I actually recently responded to somebody on LinkedIn about this, and
Good.
what I felt was the thing that I'd learned the most and my career, that if I could go back and change, and especially in the technical field, is that, like I said, I love working with the people that I've worked with are why I've stayed at Highland so long. But on the flip side of that coin, I would say that early in my career, definitely prior to Highland, and even when I first came to Highland, I valued the idea that being sort of the savant from a technology standpoint was more important than anything else. And I definitely devalued how much the relationships were the important part of how you efficiently drive your strategies forward and what you need to execute on. And so, like, in the early part of my career, I was definitely all about, like, wanting to be the person that knew the most about whatever we were talking about, from a technology standpoint. Later, I think it really started to dawn on me that the support that we can give each other in an organization, especially a growing organization, in a lot of ways can far outpace the value of the technology alone. And so I encourage people to, like, build those relationships early. Be meaningful in what you do. Make sure that you honor the commitments you make and how you kind of present yourself at work. And because they're going to serve you well in the future, and you want those to be strong relationships. And so that's something that I think, it's hard to know, because when you're kind of in the weeds, in the tech field, it can be hard to think that where I need to be spending more of my time is really getting to know the person that I work next to, or who I support, and what's important to them and why, and all of that. You sometimes can kind of not see that when you're just focused on the tech side of it. So
Yeah. Well, I've talked with some CIOs who have been surprised at how unwittingly they can quash discussions by being, for instance, the first one to give an opinion. There'll be a problem and, like, well, how should we approach this? I think maybe this and that, and then everybody else will just kind of fall in line. And when you're thinking just in a technical mindset, you
yep,
feel like you're more like one of the developers, but
yeah,
you're not.
yeah. I always try not to solution anything when I'm meeting with
Yeah.
my teams now, and I tell them if I start to, tell me to stop, and then
Yeah.
that would be it. But yeah, you don't want to be the first one to talk. I think it might have been Jeff Bezos who actually said that famously, that in his
Mhm.
meetings he always wants to be the last person to say anything, right? Because you do
Yeah.
have to realize that as a leader, that if in that environment, that you could end up, if you give your opinion first, you might definitely dissuade anyone from sharing a dissenting opinion. So it's best
Yes.
to hear everyone out.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Well, it sounds like you have never regretted a moment of your very long tenure there at Highland. So, congratulations on that. It kind of does my heart good to see CIOs that get into a company, whatever industry the company is in, and then they really find that they're home. Because for a while CIOs were just moving around a lot. Like
Yeah.
every year or two they were out, and that is such hard work, isn't it? Diving into you probably know a lot of people in your network that have done that, and what a
I
lot.
do indeed. I feel very lucky to have had this opportunity, and I feel lucky that I have always felt very supported, and have
Mhm.
always really enjoyed my time here at Highland. It's been a really great 20 years, and I look forward to
Yeah.
many more. So
Well, good, good. And you still have all your hair, so I'm going to say you're probably going
almost.
to have
I don't.
20 or 30 more, right?
We'll
So,
see. I don't know. It's kind of thinning out, so we'll see.
yeah, well, all right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining me here for this today.
Thank you
And
so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. It's been a great discussion.
Good, good. I'm glad. And I hope you, our listening audience here and watching audience, that you enjoyed today's conversation with CIO Stephen Watt of Highland Software as much as I did. This episode is the latest addition to our extensive library of CIO Leadership Live podcasts, which includes more than 150 in-depth interviews with prominent CIOs, all still available, all as long as the internet lasts. These will be available out on the web on CIO.com and on our YouTube channel as well. And please do take a moment to subscribe to CIO's YouTube channel, where in addition to these dozens and dozens of conversations with US-based CIOs, you can find several developing international editions of the podcast featuring senior IT leaders from Canada, India, New Zealand, and Australia. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time.